The cold, biting air of Alaska was a constant reminder of how isolated we were from the rest of the world. Our training base, tucked away in a remote part of the wilderness, was designed for one thing: to push us to our limits. The endless snow and ice outside made the underground bunker feel like a refuge, but that night it became a trap. After another exhausting day of drills, I made my way to the bunker's sleeping quarters. The thick metal door creaked shut behind me, and I was grateful for the warmth inside, however sparse it was. The bunker's lights cast a dim glow, barely enough to fight off the oppressive darkness outside. We were deep in the middle of nowhere, with only the howling wind to remind us of the harsh conditions beyond our walls. I slipped into bed, the sound of the heating system humming softly, lulling me into a false sense of security. But sleep was short-lived. I woke up to the sound of water that shouldn't have been there. At first, I thought it was just the cold seeping into my bones, but as I felt the wetness climbing up my legs, panic set in. Around me, the other trainees were waking up, their eyes wide with confusion and fear. "What the hell's happening?" someone shouted, their voice echoing off the concrete walls. The water was rising rapidly, icy cold and merciless. We scrambled to our feet, realizing that the doors were sealed, locking us inside. In our frantic state, someone ripped out the shower cords and we shoved them into the toilets, trying to create makeshift breathing tubes. It was a desperate move, but the water was already at our waists, creeping higher by the second. We yelled and banged on the doors, but there was no response, only the relentless rise of the freezing water. As it reached our necks, the situation became dire. We punched at the thick glass observation window, our only hope of escape. With every punch, cracks began to spread across the surface. We pounded harder, fueled by fear and adrenaline. Finally, the glass shattered and water rushed in, pulling us out into the corridor. The cold was unbearable, seeping into our bones as we fought to stay afloat. That's when we saw it, a body floating lifelessly in the murky water. It was one of our own, a trainee who hadn't survived the initial flood. The sight was horrifying, but there was no time to mourn. We looked up and saw the scientists behind another layer of glass, watching us with detached curiosity. Their eyes were cold, calculating as if they were observing a scientific experiment. They stood dry and safe while we struggled in the icy water, desperate for air and answers. Our rage bubbled over. We swam towards the observation room, slamming our fists against the glass, demanding explanations. "What the is this?" we shouted, voices hoarse with cold and anger. The scientists just stared, expressionless, until one of them pressed a button. The intercom crackled to life. "Please remain calm," a voice said, eerily calm. "This is all part of the test. You are perfectly safe." Safe? We weren't buying it. This wasn't training, it was torture. The water was up to our chins, the cold numbing our limbs. We screamed at them, desperate for the truth. But they only watched, scribbling notes on their clipboards. Finally, the water began to drain, and the doors unlocked. We stumbled out, shivering and exhausted, our breath forming clouds in the frigid air. The scientists met us with blank stares and cold explanations. They told us it was a stress test, a way to see how we handled extreme conditions. But it felt more like a sick game, played at our expense. In the harsh Alaskan wilderness, we'd expected tough training, but nothing like this. The isolation, the cold, and the sheer terror of drowning had been too real. As we stood there, dripping wet and seething with anger, we realized we were just pawns in their twisted experiment. The scientists offered no apologies, just clinical detachment. We had survived the test, but something had changed. The brutal Alaskan cold seemed even more unforgiving, and the once comforting walls of the bunker now felt like a prison. The sight of our dead comrade haunted us, a stark reminder of the dangers we faced. The scientist left, promising a debriefing that never came, leaving us with only our anger and unanswered questions. In the heart of Alaska, surrounded by endless snow and ice, we felt more isolated than ever. We had been pushed to our limits and left with nothing but the cold truth. In this place, our lives were just data points in someone else's experiment. As we huddled together for warmth, we knew one thing for certain. We needed answers, and we wouldn't rest until we got them.
Y'all send us your story. Don't worry about it being perfect. We'll do our darndest to make it shine. We've got some of the best storytellers around who can add all the fixins and make your tale come alive. Whether it's a true story or something you cooked up, we'd love to hear from you and share it with folks. So go on and shoot us an email. Come on over to Nightlight Tale, where stories come alive. Subscribe and cozy up for a night full of random tales and that good old storytelling magic. Whether you're hankering for thrillers, horror, comedy, romance, fantasy, or something else, we've got a heap of tales just right for gatherings, sleepovers, car rides, or sitting around the campfire at night. So sit back and enjoy a mix of eerie, thrilling, and sometimes downright funny stories that'll bring the magic of storytelling to life.